Video, we're looking at a few more problems involving factoring by grouping, factoring quadratic trinomials using the Kung Fu method, and then finally factoring quadratic trinomials using this method called split the middle. Let's start off by factoring by grouping. Remember, this is going to happen when we have four terms in our polynomial. We're going to group the first two terms together, and we're going to group the last two terms together. And what we're doing from there is factoring out the GCF of both of those terms. So let's start with the first one, x cubed minus 2x squared. I can divide out an x squared from both of those terms. I'll be left with x minus 2. The next two terms here, I can factor out a 5. So I'm going to put a positive 5 out in front, and when I factor out a 5, I will again be left with x minus 2. So I'm actually done factoring by grouping here. The next thing I need to do, though, is write them as my two factors. And the two factors are going to be this x minus 2. That's one of the factors that's found in those parentheses there. And then the other factor is what I'm left over with, this x squared plus 5. All right, here are my two factors that when multiplied together would get me back to my original polynomial. As always, you should check to make sure you can't factor either of these two factors any further. And since you can't, we say that this is completely factored, and we're done. All right, let's move on to the next problem. In the next problem, you'll notice that we just have three terms. This is a trinomial where our leading coefficient is not equal to 1. So we learned this method called the Kung Fu, where we kick the 2 over to the 21 here, and we rewrite that as x squared minus x minus 42. Now we're going to factor this, looking for factors of negative 42 that combine to be negative 1. Well, that is x plus 6 and x minus 7. All right, after this, we were then asked to chop. We needed to chop both of these factors by that original a value that we kicked. So we're going to divide both of those, 6 and negative 7, by 2, and finally we simplify. So x plus 6 halves, that reduces to x plus 3. And since I cannot reduce 7 over 2, that 2 that's in the denominator comes up in front of the x, and my other factor is 2x minus 7. Once again, you should check to make sure you can't factor those any further. And since they're both to degree 1, the x's in those are both to degree 1, they're linear factors, and we can't go any further. All right, our next one, you'll notice that we have the exact same quadratic trinomial. But now I'm going to teach you a method known as split the middle. And when we split the middle, we still start off by multiplying a to c. But what we do with that is we're just going to put that number right over here. That's negative 42. Now what we're doing with negative 42 is we're going to find the factors of negative 42 that combine to be negative 1. And remember from above, we said that that's going to be positive 6 and negative 7. So we're going to rewrite this quadratic trinomial by taking this middle term and splitting it up. So that will look like this, 2x squared plus 6x minus 7x minus 21. So you'll notice we took this negative 1x and we broke it up into its two factors that you would combine to get back that negative 1, but that they multiply to give you that negative 42. Now it has four terms. When we have a polynomial with four terms, we're going to factor by grouping. So taking a look at these first two terms, I can divide out a 2x, and I'll be left with x plus 3. And then I take a look at the last two terms. I see the greatest common factor is negative 7, so I can divide out a negative 7, and I'll be left with x plus 3. Once again, here's our two factors. One of them is the one that's in the parentheses, and that's x plus 3. And then the other one, x plus 3, the other one is what you're left over with, which is the 2x minus 7. And you can see that these two factors, 2x minus 7, x plus 3, are exactly the same two factors as what we got from Kung Fuing that same quadratic trinomial. So you might prefer split the middle. It's very similar to factoring by grouping. Remember, what you're doing is you're still taking the a value and the c value and multiplying them together. From that number, you're looking for the two factors that would combine to give you that b. And then you split that b value up, that middle value, you split that middle value up into those two factors, 6x minus 7x, and factor by grouping.